In that case, I guess I am just going to officially welcome you. Once again, we want to thank our friends and partners, Shendel Pest Control, not only for the help they have given us in the past, but also for making this training available to us today. And to do most of the presentation, we have Michelle Vance, who is the Director of Marketing. So Michelle, we'll just turn it over to you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. I am Michelle Vance. I'm the Director of Marketing for Shendel Pest Services. We're a Kansas-based pest control company that's been in existence for 65 years. I am a certified commercial applicator in this state, which means I can treat for bed bugs. Until recently, I didn't really have any need to treat for bed bugs. In fact, as an industry, there was very little discussion about bed bugs. But the last 2 years have seen an absolute explosion in what most people call an epidemic. And we're choosing to call it a war. Hence, we're recruiting you into our army of soldiers, and this is our bed bug boot camp. So, who is the enemy in this war? What do you guys think?
Bed bug.
The bed bug, all right? And the enemy is out for one thing, and what do you think that one thing is?
Blood.
Blood, exactly. All right, you are very good soldiers. So, the good news, libraries are in the news. That's a wonderful thing, publicity, right? But not always, because more often now the libraries are in the news because of bed bug infestations. And here in Wichita, you're not alone. Libraries really all across the country have seen this problem grow and expand as bed bugs proliferate further into places outside where we used to typically see them, namely hotels, apartments, and any place people sleep. These three numbers have something to do with bed bugs, and I'd like you to take a look and see if you can imagine what they might represent. 121,409, 7,848, and 169,490. What do you think that could mean? Anyone want to take a guess? Those numbers are what can result from just one mated female bed bug in 6 short months. With bed bugs, problems grow very large, very fast. It's why identifying and being proactive when you first spot bed bugs are so important. And specifically, one mated female bed bug can give birth through generations to over 121,000 nymphs or baby bed bugs. They can grow into 7,800 adults who can then reproduce on their own. And combined, they can inflict, this is the awful part, 169,000 bites. I have another little quiz for you. Which one's the bed bug? By a show of hands, do you think it's A, B, or C? And we'll start with A. Who thinks that A is the bed bug? Who thinks that B is the bed bug? Okay. Who thinks that C is the bed bug? All right. It's actually a little bit of a trick question. They're all bed bugs. So that's one of the things that we're going to go into today is that a bed bug can look very different depending on the life stage that it's in, and also depending on how recently it's had a blood meal. So A was a bed bug nymph. When they first hatch, they're translucent. They'll take on the color of whatever they're above. Bed bug B, that's a nymph that has fed on somebody's blood, and you can see it'll take on that blood color. And C is an adult bed bug, and that's the most commonly associated image with a bed bug. So today we're going to learn, where did these things come from? A few years ago, we weren't even talking about them. All anybody ever heard about bed bugs was that cute little nursery rhyme. Should we all say it together? Sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. Now we're hearing about them everywhere. So how do they find us? More important, how can we find them first? What do they look like? What do the bites look like? And how can you protect the library and its patrons and its contents from these destructive pests? Bed bugs are not a new problem. And this is fascinating because it actually speaks to their travel habits today. Humans in prehistoric time were cave dwellers, and in tribes would travel from cave to seek shelter and move on. Bed bugs learned that if they wanted to stay with the food, they had to do what? They had to hitchhike, right? They had to travel with the people so that they wouldn't be left behind in a cave without any source of food. So over millions and millions of years, this habit, this behavior became ingrained in the bed bugs, so that today, that's how bed bugs get around. They're going to hitchhike in people's belongings from place to place as a means of survival. In more recent times, the colonial days, the ships that came over from England to settle the United States, completely infested with bed bugs. The colonies were infested with bed bugs. But at that time, nobody gave it a second thought. It was simply a matter of life. And in fact, from that time all the way up through World War II, bed bugs were completely acceptable. They were so common that they even appeared in popular culture. In the year 1927, one of the most popular songs was by a blues singer named Bessie Smith. The title, Mean Old Bedbug Blues. And I'll read you the lyric. Yeah, bedbug sure is evil. They don't mean me no good. Thinks he's a woodpecker and I'm a chunk of wood. When I lay down at night, I wonder how can a poor gal sleep when some is holding my hand, others eating my feet. And I know that this group is going to recognize the illustrator behind this ad for a pesticide. I heard Dr. Seuss. Yes, Dr. Seuss was doing illustrations for pesticides to treat bed bugs. Here's another cartoon that he placed that was basically an ad for Flit, which was one of the very common over-the-counter pesticides you used to be able to buy to treat for bed bugs because they were just that common. But then something came on the market that changed all of that. Do you guys know what that was? You've probably heard the three letters. DDT. DDT. You're right. So DDT was invented. And what DDT did was take care of every kind of pest, including some it was never really meant to take care of. It was so widely used that it was put onto trucks in large fogging units, and they would fog for mosquitoes with DDT. Does anybody remember that? I've talked to people who remember the smell. It had a real unique odor, and they loved how it smelled, and like these kids, they'd run behind the truck and breathe in the DDT. If you can see the pin on the lapel of the woman in the photo on the right, can you tell what that is? That's a stewardess. Can you imagine getting on a flight, taking your seat, awaiting the pre-flight announcement from the cabin, and here comes the stewardess down the aisle spraying DDT throughout the plane? Of course, it had lots of military uses as well, applied directly onto skin, and it wasn't just soldiers. Little Johnny, before he went to school, had his DDT applied. And of course, what would a picnic on the beach be without DDT? So you can see it was prevalent, it was everywhere. But what happened was in the 1970s, there was research that showed that DDT was causing the shells of eagle eggs to crack before the baby eagles could hatch. So it was eventually taken off the market. And since then, we've seen a resurgence not only in bed bugs, but some other pests as well. So why are they a problem now? If you think of your own habits, as a society, we travel more often and further than the generation before us did. And we're less vigilant. We haven't grown up with that knowledge of what bed bugs look like and the behaviors that we need to take to avoid bringing them into our homes. As an industry, we use less residual pesticides than we used to. And a residual pesticide is one where we would apply the material and it lingers to kill pests even after we've left. We don't typically use that anymore, and it's mainly because of some environmental concerns. So we have switched to something called bait, and that's typically for roaches and ants. So a bait will be a very concentrated, pea-sized drop of material that a roach or that an ant will feed on and they take back to its nest or to its colony and effectively eliminate a whole population of pests. So that's a switch that we've made that's been for the better for the most part, but it has allowed bed bugs to gain a foothold. Pest management providers, in many cases, the pest management industry is a family business, and it's passed down from grandfather to son to grandson. And so there hasn't been a whole lot of experience dealing with bed bugs. It's really a fairly new pest. So many companies just haven't dealt with them. Pyrethroids is the class of pesticide that is the most common. It's if you go to Lowe's or you go to Home Depot and you're going to buy a pesticide off the shelf, chances are it's a pyrethroid. And the active ingredient is actually made from chrysanthemums. Well, bed bugs are highly, highly resistant to any product containing a pyrethroid. You could pour gallons of pyrethroid on bed bugs and you're not going to kill them. And then finally, with any topic gaining some notoriety in the media, there's a little bit of hysteria. So people may be calling any unknown bite a bed bug bite. So we watch out for that too. I'm going to give you some pictures here so you can have a little better perspective on the size of these bed bugs. This picture shows, if you can see it, the little red dot on the gentleman's knuckle. That's what we call a first instar bed bug nymph that's had a meal. The only reason you can see it at all is because it's just fed. So you can see the red color on the skin. Can everybody see how that stands out? Super tiny, about the size of the head of a pin. The bugs will look different depending on which life cycle they're in and how recently they've fed. So they tend to become more cigar-shaped and elongated if they've fed, and of course can be anywhere from the size of the head of a pin all the way up to about an apple seed. How do they find us? At night, if we're sleeping, they actually move in a fairly random pattern. They can't necessarily sense where you are until they're within just a few inches of you. But there are three things that attract them to people. It's the body heat that we emit, the carbon dioxide that we breathe out, and then there's something called a pheromone that our bodies will release. And have any of you been at a picnic with your family and somebody is getting eaten alive by mosquitoes and the person right next to them is perfectly fine? Okay, one of you is exhibiting or exuding more pheromone than the other. And so that might make you more or less attractive to a bed bug as well. So how do they feed? There's an entomological term for the type of mouth part that a bed bug has. They're called piercing sucking. And isn't that pleasant? So they will insert these piercing sucking mouth parts into your skin. They will inject a numbing agent so that you don't feel them feeding on you, and an anticoagulant which allows your blood to flow freely into the bed bug so that they can feed. They will typically feed for 5 minutes at a time. And there's an interesting phenomenon because they will overfeed, and I'll show you in a few slides what happens as a result of that. So what happens? And I apologize, some of these pictures are going to make you scratch, so just warning you. For about half of us, nothing. So 50% of people, 1 in 2 of the people in this room, can be fed on by a bed bug and have absolutely no idea that it ever happened because you don't show any outward symptoms. It's the other half of us who can end up with bites that look like this. And what's common in a bed bug bite situation, can you see how the bites on that gentleman's his left shoulder blade down his back are almost in a straight line? That's a telltale sign that these are bed bug bites and not something else, because the bugs are very lazy. They're not going to swarm all over him like ants. They will simply walk over, find him, and they will feed on the part of the body that's closest to the mattress. So that's why they tend to be in a line like that. That's where his body came in contact with the mattress. The reaction can vary within an individual, and as an example of that, our canine handler fed bed bugs to himself just to see what would happen. And he noticed a difference between the nymph bed bugs feeding on him and the adult bed bugs feeding on him. So when it was a nymph that fed, he got a much more red, angry welt than the adult left. It's not exactly scientific, and frankly, I don't care to do the same thing and validate his research. But that was interesting to note that it can be different based on the age of the bed bug that's feeding. And he also found that he didn't always react immediately to those bites. So here's some other pictures of common bite areas. They're not going to feed through hair or through clothing, so they're simply going to go over to the part of your body that's exposed. So arms, the back is a common area, and again you see that linear pattern of the bites. The neck, and here's a case where she's having a more severe reaction. You can see the much larger welt there near the base of her neck. Legs, common area as well, where the bed bugs are going to feed. And this is sad. You know, obviously there's no discretion made by the bed bugs whether it's an adult or a child. They'll feed on any host that's present, and they will even feed on pets, but it's not as likely, again, because they won't feed through hair. So if they're going to feed on a pet, it's a short-haired pet, or they're going to go on that soft underbelly skin where there's not as much fur. So again, the pattern of the bites, if you're going to see them, it's linear. They tend to be in a line, an inch or so apart. They're often clustered close together. And if you could look very closely, you might notice a teeny puncture in the center of the bite. Doctors tend to recommend that you simply treat them with an over-the-counter hydrocortisone cream. They don't recommend the pink stuff. Calamine lotion, right? Yeah, they don't recommend that because it can dry it out and actually make the rash worse. The question we're most often asked is, do they transmit disease? And the answer to that question is, as of today, there is no evidence that they transmit disease. We do know that they carry germs on their exoskeletons, as many as 28 different pathogens on the outside of their bodies. But there have been no studies, and it's becoming more and more studied. The CDC is taking a much more active role in studying this. There's no proof that they transmit any of those germs from person to person. So that's the good news when it comes to bed bugs. And in fact, what the CDC has published states that the do-it-yourself type cures or treatments can actually be much worse than the bed bugs themselves. We have seen heartbreaking stories of people that have caused themselves to burn by applying gasoline. They've burned their apartments down, doing desperate things to keep the bed bugs from feeding on them at night. So the bed bug life cycle is interesting because it actually contributes in some cases to how they spread. The mating of a bed bug, and I will try to say this in the most delicate way, it's called traumatic insemination. So the male bed bug, rather than acknowledge that the female has a perfectly acceptable biological place for the mating to occur, will simply come within range and stab her anywhere in the abdomen he can to impregnate her. It's painful, as you can imagine, and after a while the females will start to break off from the rest of the bed bugs because it's a matter of life and death for them. It's a survival instinct. So the fact that the mating is so brutal can actually cause the population to spread out further because the females are going to start to go off on their own. But I digress. So after the mating occurs, within 3 to 6 days, the eggs are going to be laid. Those will hatch in about a week, and you'll have a first instar nymph, that translucent pest you see coming out of the egg sac. I should say, when the female lays the eggs, they're not neatly laid in a nest somewhere. She doesn't hover over them. There's no protective instinct on the part of the female. She walks and drops eggs. So the eggs can be all over. Once those eggs hatch and the nymph is born, it needs a blood meal to continue to grow and survive and become an adult. There are 5 stages or instars that a bed bug nymph will go through. It needs a blood meal each time, and it will shed its skin each time it feeds. So over the next 4 to 6 weeks, you're going to see a bed bug go from a nymph to an adult, at which point it can then reproduce and start that cycle all over again. An adult bed bug, research is finding, can live upwards of 1.5 years. So once they are hatched, they're around for a while. And if you think back to that early slide with the numbers that I showed, this is why those numbers grow so large so fast. When you're communicating with somebody about a bed bug and what it looks like, one of the most common descriptive terms that we use that everybody seems to get is that a bed bug looks like an apple seed. It's small, flat, brown, oval in shape. And you can see here side by side, it's smaller typically than an apple seed, but very comparable in what an adult bed bug looks like. So where will you find an infestation? If you're dealing in a home situation or a hotel room, typically 7 out of 10 of the infestations we find are what we call a primary infestation. They're in the bed, the bedding, or the headboard. And the bugs love the corners of the mattress, the seams, the tufts, the folds in a bed skirt, any place where they can feel secure. About 1 in 4 times, it's a secondary infestation, so we'll find them in the cracks and crevices of the nightstand or something in the nightstand. And then 7% of the time, we're just vexed. We can't figure out where these things are harboring, why they're in that room, and they're going to be in some place bizarre like the popcorn ceiling. They tend to like that. Or they'll be in a smoke detector, or maybe in an outlet completely across from the bed. My personal theory is those are the rogue females who have said, I'm done, and I'm going over here. Whether that's true, well, I don't know. But in a library, where are you going to find an infestation? Obviously books. So when books come in, it's important to look particularly in the spine, again remembering that they're going to like that feeling of being covered and protected and in something that's tight-fitting. So look in the corner of the spine there. If the book has a cover on it, you're probably going to want to either take off that cover or at least peek up underneath it, fold the book over and look inside and make sure you're not seeing any bed bugs harboring in there. Here's just another good picture of some bed bugs in the spine of a book. Here you can see bed bug eggs and what looks like felt tip pen, like somebody just got sloppy, right, with a felt tip pen maybe while they were reading that book. That's actually a unique phenomena to the bed bug called a fecal smear. And I mentioned earlier that the bed bugs tend to overeat when they feed on us. As a result, as they're feeding, it's not unusual for them to be defecating the blood out the other end. And it very much looks like felt tip pen marks. So if you see those dots and they're unexplained, and if you see something that looks like a minuscule grain of rice perhaps near it, it very well could be fecal smearing along with a bed bug egg sac. In this picture, where do you think we would find the bed bugs in this picture? In the chairs, yes. Upholstered furniture in a library is a good place where the bed bugs are going to harbor. Again, if you just think of their behavior, they're going to come and hitchhike on people and in their belongings, and those people are going to go sit in the comfortable chairs and linger, and those bed bugs are going to have a chance to transfer from your guest to that furniture. Here's another place where you're going to see bed bugs in a library. Oftentimes the first place if they're coming in on books that are being returned or other materials. Who's to say that a CD case would be out of the realm of possibility? So how do they get into your library? Obviously the materials that are being returned are a big source. Any book packs or backpacks or book bags or purses, any belongings that the guest is carrying in from home could harbor bed bugs. And a issue that we see a lot in retirement homes, those electric scooters or wheelchairs, oftentimes are a source of infestation. And we've had situations where we've treated an entire wing of a facility, and we had the residents go out while we treated, but we didn't treat the chairs that they were on, and they come back in and the bed bugs reappear. And we've learned over time that those scooters and wheelchairs can oftentimes be a major source of harborage for the bed bugs. So if you're going to inspect, what are some tools that you would need? Obviously a flashlight, because these things are really tiny, and a magnifying glass so you can tell if you're looking at a speck of dust or lint or an actual bed bug. A container for samples, because you're going to want your pest control provider to verify, is that really a bed bug or is it a baby German cockroach, for instance, a case that's an example of something that I think the library had happen here just recently. There are other pests that at different stages could easily be confused with a bed bug, so make sure you collect a sample if you see one. Tweezers, just because, don't touch it if you don't have to. Gloves. And then protection from getting the bed bugs on yourself if that's something you're concerned about. Off will not kill the bed bugs, but it could repel them long enough to keep them from getting on you or in your belongings. If you're going to inspect the furniture, it's not enough to just look at it and say, okay, I don't see any bed bugs. You literally need to turn it over, look underneath. That's oftentimes where we find them. You're going to need to pull seams apart and look in between seams and tufts and any gathering of fabric, because that's where the bed bugs are going to want to be. Cushions, if you have these deep, overstuffed, really comfortable seating areas, really pull those cushions apart and look, because that is bed bug heaven in there. They get frequent meals, it's nice and dark. If you're going to find bed bugs in upholstered furniture, it's going to look something like this picture. One tool for inspecting, and I think it's one that the library has found useful already, is a canine. And just like dogs can be trained to sniff out bombs and drugs, canines have been trained to sniff out bed bugs. And a single scent canine can be trained to sniff out just that one pest, bed bugs, and whether they're a live bug or a viable egg. This picture is actually of Patches. She is a darling smart dog. She was a rescue beagle from Florida, trained at a very prestigious canine academy, and works for Shendel Pest Services. And she is a hit everywhere she goes. She is lovable. She does her job really well. And if you ever have the chance to see a canine team at work, it's fascinating to watch how they interact. And we very proudly have what we feel is one of the best canine teams in the Midwest. So what are you looking for? Obviously live bed bugs. And here's a picture of what they look like. It's not uncommon to see different sizes and different stages all clustered together. They do have that instinct where they're going to want to harbor as a group. Cast skins, because remember, as they move from first instar to second instar and they take those blood meals, they're going to shed that skin each time. So the cast skins is another good signal that you've got them. The fecal spots, again, it just looks like black felt tip marker. You're going to see those spots. Bed bug eggs, can you see the tiny little white eggs? And you know how small the bed bug is, so by comparison you can see just how small those eggs are. Here's some pictures of bed bugs on a mattress. They like those corners and the edges and the seams, so you're going to see them grouped together. Here's bed bugs on a box spring. They like dark and undisturbed places, so more often we find them on the box spring rather than on the mattress themselves, because the box spring doesn't get moved about nearly as much. Here's signs of bed bugs on a leg. It almost looks like mold, right? But that's actually an accumulation of fecal spots. And that could just as easily be the leg of a chair. You probably will never see this here in a library, but just to give you a picture of what some of your visitors may be coming from at home, here's a pretty bad infestation with bed bugs and fecal smearing everywhere on sheets and on a carpet. A place you might not think to look, but actually can be a fairly common spot for bed bug harborage, the backs of picture frames. particularly in hotels above the bed. And if it's a wooden frame, the legs of the bed bug, the way that they crawl, they prefer a wooden substrate or a rough substrate over a smooth, shiny plastic. So the backs of picture frames for them are perfect. Tiny little nooks and crannies for them to hide, close to their food source, and dark and undisturbed almost all the time. Here's what some stains might look like on wood furniture, similar to what you might have here in a library. Again, if you didn't know what you were looking at, you might think it was dirt or an accumulation of some mold or food. And here's another good picture of bed bugs on wood furniture. And here you see the shed skins, the live bugs, and the eggs all kind of existing together, along with lots of the fecal spotting. And who can tell what this picture is? Yep. There's a bed bug harboring in a Phillips head screw. So a spot, think of how tiny that is. That's the type of spot where you're going to find these bed bugs. So what's most important is that we are proactive and you have a battle plan in place so that we can defeat this enemy. If you notice any signs, anything that we just saw, the stains, the skins, obviously the eggs or the live bugs themselves, notify your supervisor and hopefully have a written plan in place so that everybody knows what their role is at that point. If you were in a housing situation, one of the first things that we do is look not just at the apartment or the hotel room that reported the infestation. We're going to look above and below and side to side, and we're going to continue those inspections until we know that there's no further evidence. Because there are some nationalities, for instance, some international folks who live with bed bugs. It's different than here in America. They've had them overseas. They don't think it's any big deal, and they would never bother to report them. But then those bugs will spread to the adjoining unit, and then that person reports it. And if we don't go and inspect side to side and above and below, we may never get to the original source. In a library, it's going to be important to monitor those book return areas. And you can do this a couple of ways. Something as simple as placing glue boards down that will allow you to see what might be walking out of those books and trying to get further into the library. And look at those traps regularly, or have your pest provider look at those and identify what might be getting caught on the glue boards. You can go a little more high-tech with monitors. This is something called a night watch that actually will put out CO2, a synthetic pheromone, and heat, all to attract bed bugs to it. So that's another option, a little more expensive than the glue boards, but it can work very well. Laundering. If you feel like you've come in contact with bed bugs, you can launder your clothing in hot water. You can dry it on the hottest setting, and you're going to kill the bed bugs. So in some cases, it really can be that simple. But the problem in a library is what? You can't wash a book. So we have to have other methods of dealing with the pests. Here's another type of monitor that's really more suited for home use, but it's like a double donut. And the sides are rough. They allow the bed bug to climb up. Remember I said they like that rough substrate but not smooth plastic. So it's rough on the outside, they can climb up, smooth on the inside so they fall down and can't get up. It's like that commercial. And depending on whether they're in the inner ring or the outer ring, as a pest professional, it helps us identify, are these bugs coming from the bed, if they're in the inner ring, or are they coming from outside looking to go into the bed, if they're in that outer ring. Mattress encasements are another important tool that we use, again, in a residential setting. What's critical with mattress encasements is that you use one that is entomologist approved and not bed bug certified. You can go to Walmart or Target and buy a bed bug certified mattress encasements. And all that means is the bed bugs love them because they can keep biting you right through. An entomologist approved mattress encasement has a weave that is so tight that it prevents those piercing, sucking mouth parts from getting through the encasement and biting you. So effectively it means, yes, you're entombing bed bugs inside your mattress if you put one of these on, but they can never bite you again. There's also box spring encasements. And the box spring encasements are a little less expensive because the weave is not as tight, because it doesn't need to be, because you're not going to be sleeping on the box spring. But a very good tool. Vacuuming. Vacuuming works wonders at picking up bed bugs. It's the ultimate integrated pest management tool. So it's environmentally friendly, there's no chemicals being used, and it'll allow you to see what has arrived or moved into that room since the last time you vacuumed. An important piece of advice, make sure it's a HEPA filter vacuum so that you're not just sucking up the bed bugs and blowing them out the other end and spreading them even worse than they were before. Steam. Steam is a very powerful tool that can eradicate the bugs. It's typically a pin-thin stream of steam that has to go right onto the bug to kill it. So if it's a visible infestation, steam can be a very good tool. And here you see a picture of it being used in a library. Freezing. There's a product called Rapid Freeze. It uses basically frozen carbon dioxide to kill the bed bugs that way. That's another tool that's gaining in popularity. One piece of advice, if books are coming in, to seal them in plastic. These are actually hamburger patties because I couldn't find a picture of books in a plastic bag. So here you go. Seal them just like you would seal hamburger you're going to be putting in the freezer. And make sure to keep it that way until you know that infested book is going to be taken care of. Oh, you know what? Important point. Let me go back. Here's why it's important. I don't think I mentioned this earlier. Bed bugs can live up to 1 year without a blood meal. So they can go into a wall, they can go into a state of hibernation, if you will, and they can live, once they're an adult, now not when they're in the nymph stages, but once they've gone through that 4 to 6 weeks, they've gone through the 5 instar stages, they're an adult, they can go up to a year. So we've learned with hotel operators and sometimes apartment managers who have a problem and they say, well, I'm just going to take that room offline, my occupancy rate isn't that high, I'll come back in 90 days. Well, the bed bugs are probably still there waiting. So they can live up to a year. If you do have items that are coming in, there's something called a Pack-Tite. Retails for around $300. You can put the suspected contaminated items in the Pack-Tite and heat them to 120 degrees, and that will kill all 3 stages, egg, nymph, and adult. So one good solution for smaller items. It won't help you on a chair, but it would take care of some of the smaller items that are coming in and out. Thermal remediation. This has really been the most popular, most groundbreaking use of heat to treat bed bugs. Thermal remediation is a process by which we bring in large heating units and industrial fans, and we're going to slowly bring up the temperature of a room to a fatal level for a bed bug. We're going to circulate that air around and hold it so that we know that we have killed the eggs, the nymphs, and the adults. And I want to show you a slide that's a really good demonstration of pesticide resistance and why one of the worst things you can do is apply one of those bombs that you can buy at the store, okay? Remember we talked about pyrethroids and how resistant the bed bugs are. So here's a typical bed bug population. And the bed bugs with the R's on their bodies, those are the only ones that are resistant in this case. So you drop a bomb. Did pretty good, right? You've only got a couple left. So would that be a successful treatment? Exactly. If just one of these is a female, they reproduce, and here's what you have now. An entire population of super bed bugs that are all resistant. So the use of those over-the-counter, do-it-yourself bed bug bombs have really hurt have really hurt the industry, because a lot of people have tried that first, allowed these populations to grow and become really resistant, and now we're dealing with a problem that's even harder to eradicate. So some things to remember. I showed you a lot of different methods. There is no one silver bullet. There's no one method alone that's going to solve every bedbug infestation. What's most important is that you do what you're doing today, that you're partnering with a pest control provider, you're becoming proactive, you're getting educated, and professional help in any public facility like this is really the best way to go. So some more tips for library staff. You're going to want to set up a routine inspection process for incoming materials. And now you've seen what you're looking for, the fecal stains, the bugs themselves, any shed skins or eggs. Utilize monitors in your book return areas, even if it's something as simple as one of those sticky glue boards. Check the entire library periodically, especially any upholstered furniture for bed bugs. Where it's feasible, consider replacing any overstuffed, real cushy pieces of furniture with some simple wood furnishings that would be harder for bed bugs to hide in. And don't discard anything that you think are bed bugs. We talked earlier about having a sample container so that you can have somebody identify that for you. That's going to be real important. It can save you money if it's not a bed bug infestation, and hopefully direct you to a quick treatment if it is. Couple other tips. We talked about vacuuming. That's a real important tool that you can do yourself. There's a material called diatomaceous earth. It's a very earth-friendly, environmentally friendly material that you can buy yourselves, at least in the state of Kansas, and you can apply it yourselves. In some states, it's required to be applied by a pest management professional, but that's certainly something that you can do that will help deter the growth of the bed bugs. There's something called Nuvan strips, and Nuvan strips can be placed in a sealed container or a bag with contaminated or infested books or other items, and those can kill the bed bugs as well, but it needs a little bit of an air source, so somehow you got to figure out what sort of container that would be airtight, that would hold the Nuvan material, that would still allow you to get some airflow through it, but it's another option. And in a nutshell, that's bed bugs. So if you would like, I think we're going to move to a question and answer phase at this point.